Hey, friends! I'm Jesse Fisco.
And I'm Ambry Fisco.
As founders of several successful businesses, we've experienced absolute joy and satisfaction working together to build our empire.
Our journey started off as a small business idea and has launched into a multi-million-dollar portfolio. It would have never been possible had Jesse and I not understood the key principles of making it all work together. But it has not been easy.
We found ourselves in the trenches trying to balance real life with business life while maintaining our strong commitment to creating an amazing marriage.
And we've emerged in a beautiful way together. This podcast was created to help you do what we've done, build an amazing marriage together while maintaining balance between life and business.
So here we are. You're listening to the Matrimonial Merger, a couple's guide to balancing life and business.
Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. Super excited to be back again on this fantastic Wednesday, chatting with you all and sharing some awesome information with you. So today, Jesse, how was your day?
My day's good. My day, I felt super efficient and productive. Some of the things that we have talked about in this episode or in previous episodes, we have been implementing at an even higher level. And we are seeing even higher results.
Yes.
I mean,
consistency.
I've been posting these motivational videos on Instagram, and one of them hit over 12,000 views in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that was great. That
was cool. The fact that I just know that my voice is being reached out to other people and motivating other people, super cool to me.
Yeah, that's fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you don't follow Jesse specifically, he is at Mr. Utah Real Estate on Instagram. And yeah, he does post some really awesome motivational content. So if that's your thing, go give him a follow.
Thanks, Ambry.
You're welcome. Yeah. So today, our question's coming from a listener. So the question is, what is your perspective and advice regarding taking risk as a couple, especially when one person in the relationship is often the one seeking financial gain, like going after taking the risk and making investments? How do you get your spouse on board, taking risks with you and being all in?
All right, listener, hold my Mountain Dew.
This is a really great topic, and I'm excited that our topic today is coming from this question, because I feel like this question literally is a great mirror of Jesse and I, and especially where we started as a couple taking risks. Like, you know, they mentioned like one person in the relationship is often the one like going after the risk, and the other person is a little maybe more passive or just more like, you know, not naturally a risk taker, which describes us perfectly, because in our relationship, Jesse is he's naturally a risk taker and goes after risk and looks for it. I am just not that type of a person by nature, and it's taken me a lot more like effort and growth to get into that mindset. So I love this. I think this is perfect for us to talk about. So we're excited today to share with you some of our personal experiences and how we typically handle risk in our relationship and kind of how that's evolved and what that looks like for us.
Absolutely. So, I think the one thing that we want to hit home to you as the listener, there is no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Yeah, so that's like the foundation for this episode and everything.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this without your spouse and you want to implement this, get your spouse on here as well so he or she can hear this. There is no such thing as failure, only feedback. Failure does not exist. Just let that sink in for a moment. What is failure, Ambry?
It's literally like an idea that we've created and adopted because of like fear and excuses or whatever. It's made up. Like, it's not real if you think about it. Like, it's not a real thing. So put that into your mind right now. There's no failure, only feedback. And who's in charge of what you do with that feedback?
Only you.
You are.
You are
Which is awesome.
You are the captain of the ship and the master of the soul.
And really quick, like, before we jump right in, like, when you think about that, like, there's no failure, only feedback, like, what are you afraid of? Like, you can't fail. So if you apply that to, like, any aspect of your life, like, it takes away a lot of fear and pressure. It's like, you can't fail. You can only learn, and there's only feedback. So take failure out of the equation, and like, that's a recipe for success already. But anyways, so
Absolutely.
There's our foundation for this episode.
Foundation laid. Now let's build this house. Okay. So you like that? Real
Is
estate.
it a brick house?
It's a brick rambler.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. There's some real estate goonage for you. So awesome. Here's the deal. Number one reason why you are receiving the feedback from your spouse or your business partner when taking risks. And what I mean by feedback is essentially like, oh, I don't know, that's a little risky, like whatever the case.
Lack of decision, like just kind of sitting, like it's not moving anywhere.
Yeah, you're a little frustrated. The number one reason why is your roadmaps are not aligned together. One does not understand the vision of the other, and you have not established your vision and purpose together. That's the number one. And that's the biggest problem. So, Ambry, I'm sure there's been times where, like, you can think of when you and I are not on the same page, and there was something extremely important to you, right?
Sure.
Yeah, like, how does that make you feel?
Well, you don't feel validated, which is like a huge problem for any relationship. Like, that is one of the most important things in a relationship is validation. And like, if you don't feel validated, you feel frustrated. Like, and you know, I don't know. I mean, from there, it's like it goes downhill.
Yeah. I think that the way I feel is it's like a banana that your child has left in the back of a car.
Oh, here comes the banana analogy.
The banana. Okay. It gets neglected.
I hope this is better than the spider analogy that in one of our previous episodes.
Or the petty cup. I love that. Someone reached out and was like, I don't have a petty cup of water, and I love it. But the banana, okay? We've all been there. For you that have kids, the banana that gets neglected in the darkness underneath a back seat. Slowly, that banana starts to like rot, and it starts to like emit a nasty freaking smell. And then once you find the banana, you're like, this is disgusting. And you start going, I resent myself. I am a terrible person. I cannot believe I've left this banana sitting in the car for this long unnoticed.
All of a sudden, you're like, how the heck did this banana get here? Like, no food ever again in this car, even though we have children, and that's kind of unrealistic.
Right.
So, like, essentially what you're saying, Jesse, is like, if you start to feel unvalidated, you feel like something that's important to you is not being like seen, or a risk that you want to take is not being taken seriously, like you feel like a rotten banana in the backseat of a car that's been neglected, and it's just like,
right. I don't feel like
it's awful.
I'm not progressing. I'm not like, I'm just rotting away because I know what my potential is and I can see it. It's just that vision hasn't been like portrayed the way or delivered to you in a way that is like, this is where we're going. Sure. Right. And I think that the biggest thing is like, I'm a terrible communicator in general when it comes to like my vision. I there's plenty of times where I like run up and you're like, what are you doing? Something. And I'm like back at it. Right. Like, I just don't communicate it well enough. And so,
I'm a very detailed person.
And you're very detailed.
Okay. So like, what does it smell like? What does it look like? What color is it?
It's a nasty brown banana that smells like poop. That's what it is. Anyways, so like, that's something I've had to adjust and go back to when talking about risk as well. But at the end of the day, don't become a freaking rotten banana underneath the car, like underneath the backseat of the car.
Don't let your spouse become that rotten banana under the backseat of the car. It's just rude.
I like that because like, if there's something important to you, like we kind of talked about this in one of the previous episodes about the Lamborghini. Like, it wasn't until we sat down and really talked about the Lamborghini and the importance to me that's when it clicked and the vision was made. You have to talk about it, and you can't let your spouse feel like this moldy banana. Yeah.
And I think that's, like, you brought up one key thing is like, you need to portray like a clear idea, and like, I mean, you're selling your idea. Like, so it's got to be solid, and you have to have like a purpose and a vision, and, you know, in order for your spouse to see that and embrace it and take it on as their own.
And let me just go off on a tangent there. What your spouse says as far as questions is not interrogation. It's not that he or she is brainwashing you to think that your idea is bad. It's because they are invested and genuinely want to know. They haven't done the research you have done.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're asking you questions. So don't get frustrated.
Yeah. We've had that happen several times. Like
Yeah.
you've come to me with an idea and it's like in your mind, you see like 500 branches of this idea that all are beautiful and it makes sense. And it's like, it's such a good idea. Well, I only see like this little like stem that's trying to flourish. Like, I'm like, okay, so what, like, what exactly is this? What is that? And like, I want to understand, like, what is this risk? What is the result? What's the vision? Like, what are we going to achieve out of this? And what, like, why do you love this idea so much?
Right.
And like, because I am a detailed person, like, I want to know like the why behind things.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's like, it can be like difficult, but yeah, like you have to learn to work together with each other's personalities and risk tolerances, right? Like,
yeah,
that's another thing. Like for the first several years of our relationship, my perspective on risk is very different than it is now and very different than Jesse's in the first place. I mean, I would worry and point out every single thing that could go wrong, very low risk tolerance, whereas Jesse has, like I said, pretty high risk tolerance. And so, you know, we kind of had to set a foundation of understanding each other's like personality and risk tolerance, appreciating the strength that comes from each of those differences, and then working together towards like growing and evolving. Because like having a low risk tolerance, like, is that necessarily a bad thing? No, I don't want to paint the picture that it's like a bad thing. Like, but being married to someone that has a high risk tolerance, like you've got to find that middle ground and you've got to be able to like create like something beautiful out of both of those, you know, risk tolerances and come together and find a way to make it work. And for us, you know, sometimes that has looked like, obviously I have to adjust my mindset and become more risk tolerant. And then you have to be okay with me sometimes being like, okay, Jesse, we actually need to look at the logistics of this and look at, you know, like, you don't want to like worry about everything that could go wrong and like, well, this could happen or that could happen. And like, it can't be out of fear, but rather like, all right, so here's the deal. Here's the reality of the risk. Here's, you know, the pros and cons, and assess it and move forward in a, you know, in a strategic way. But it's not like you're not hindering it and you're not, you know, going into something that really doesn't make sense just because of another thing we've talked about, which is a shiny object syndrome. So like you definitely have to find that balance, and having a low risk or a high risk tolerance, neither of those are a bad thing. But when you are married and one person has that low risk and one person has a high risk tolerance, like obviously you've got to figure that out and it has to work together.
Right. When assessing the risk, this is where one of our other episodes we talked about, the what if versus what if.
Yep.
This is where the what ifs can really start to manifest themselves, and you have to be cautious.
If you haven't already, go back and listen to that episode after this one, because like that is huge.
Huge. Right.
Like the angle and the way you're looking at something is huge.
So let me kind of give you a rundown. Okay, we're going to invest in an Amazon e-commerce store. Okay, what is the risk? Worst case here is that the e-commerce store fails and Amazon shuts this store down, because what we're doing is not 100% in line with Amazon's terms and services. Okay, we understand that. But instead of saying, well, what if that happens? We say, this is the risk, but what if we actually get past the first initial phase and we actually have growth?
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that money? What is that going to do with that extra investment?
Yeah.
That is where the what ifs from our previous episode need to be happening, not what if Amazon shuts our store down. Right. So that's just kind of like to put that back into perspective. Yeah. But like at this point, like, you guys, there are so many things that you can do, and there are so many opportunities out there for you. Yeah. It's just coming together. It reminds me of a couple things. Like, I figured for this episode, when Ambry and I were preparing this to talk to you about it, we were like, let's share some of like our initial risks.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we've come a long way with when it comes to risk. Like there's definitely kind of an evolution in our life when it comes to risk tolerance and risk perspective. Naturally, because, we had very little money to risk when we were first married. Like, risk looked very different then than it does now. But at the end of the day, the same principles can apply. And hopefully us sharing our experiences can like put other people on a faster track to success and taking risk in marriage and being aligned.
I'm not going to lie. This was way funny because when we were writing this episode, like if you would have sat there in the room as we're sitting here typing down like what experiences we were going to share, the 3 experiences that we're sharing with you tonight were both boom. Like it wasn't even a question. Both of us knew.
Yeah.
Like, which
those
is
were
cool.
kind of like the pivotal
moments.
Yeah. And where we really were able to come together and take a good risk, but have a great outcome because we're on the same page. We both have the same, vision and anyways.
So like what we're telling you guys in this episode of what you need to do, this is the top 3 things that we've done. We didn't even know these philosophies or these things. We just were figuring it out. Young kids, right? Married at 19 and 21.
Yep, I was 19 for 3 whole weeks.
3 whole weeks when we got married, and we're figuring this out. So, like, this is stuff that we were doing we didn't even understand. We just, based off of guidance and awesome mentors in our lives, family members, this is kind of just how we blended together. But the number one story that I remember, Ambry, is when we were in school and we were going to college, and both of us, due to financial aid, were eligible for a loan that was no interest for the time that we were in school.
Yep.
The loan amount was up to $10,000. And so we sat there and we're like,
which at the time was like so much money to us.
So much money. Right. And we're sitting there like, okay, yeah, we could get $10,000, but like, we don't need it. Like we've already got our school paid for financial aid.
And we didn't necessarily like want to use it if we didn't have to and then have to like pay it back and end up paying the interest like if we didn't need to.
Yeah. And then there was one day when like all of a sudden it clicked like, well, why don't we just get that $10,000 and just go put it into a high interest account?
Yeah. Which at the time, the place where I was working offered that sort of thing. And you could, invest personal money and like, I think the return was like 4.5% over a year or something like that. But that was like a guaranteed return. Mm-hmm. So like that part, okay, not too risky, but the fact that we're taking like student loan money, making it our own money, and then risking that money, like, we couldn't lose that money because we didn't have $10,000 to pay it back if we lost it. Like, but it made sense. And it was like, a smart move. And
I think what was so cool about it is it wasn't about like, it sat there for a year, right? At $10,000 at 4%. So like when we cashed out, we made $450, which to like an experienced investor, it's like, woohoo, like you want a medal? Like, But
like, that was literally off of money that like, like we took a student loan. We paid that money back. We made the money off it. I remember like when we were going to invest that, I remember them asking me like literally like looking at us, we're young, we like are just getting started. They're like, so this is your money? I'm like, yeah, like technically it is. I mean, like it's my money. It's either going to get spent on like school and books and like life, rent, whatever, or I'm going to invest it. So like, yeah, it is my money.
Or we're just not even going to use it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, anyways,
looking back at it, we should have like went and got like $100,000 worth of credit cards that were interest deferred for a year and put that money into that account and then made like, a lot more money.
You couldn't do that though. That was against the rules.
No, you could.
But it would have been awesome.
They wouldn't know. Anyways. Crazy.
All right.
Okay.
So that was like one like thing that we like at first married. We're like, oh, this is crazy. We're going to do this. Like, cool. We made $400. Woohoo.
It was awesome. Best $400 ever. And that kind of like led us into stuff and helped us kind of get our mindset right. Like, this is what we want to do. We want to make our money work for us. And
then
that
we
was
decided,
kind of our vision, right?
Paying rent sucks. Like, all of our money is going to rent. Like, we need to find a way to afford a house and like start, investing in our future. And, we were super interested in real estate anyways. Like, so we found a house, we bought it. We bought a house that needed some cosmetic work. It was a great house, but it could use some cosmetic love to make it more appealing. And so we spent like a year and a half just DIY hacking this house.
We
like
weren't even in there
it,
a year and a half.
No.
We were in there 9 months.
No, we were, what?
Yeah, we were in there 9 months.
I don't even remember, but it was
crazy.
Was it only 9 months?
It was only 9 months.
Oh, anyways, it was quick, and we loved it, but we learned a lot. We did a lot of projects, but that was like a big deal. Like that was, but anyways.
The initial plan was we're going to buy this house and we're going to stay in it and we're going to have family, right? Yeah. Like we lacked a huge vision there because we just didn't understand. Like,
but it was at the time a massive, it was a huge house, but it was a risk because we were committing to like a mortgage and we were committing to something more like, solid. And anyways, that was a big deal. Then after that,
but then like, let's kind of stay there for a second, if you don't mind. Like the feedback came that you were driving way too far, right? So let's pause there. There was still feedback that was coming. Totally. Ambry driving 45 minutes to work in the snow, traffic. We didn't see each other.
An hour and a half sometimes to get home.
So although we bought our first house and it was like, hey, we're going to stay here for a long time, the feedback actually pointed us in a direction of we're going to have to flip this house, fix the things now, and then sell it and figure out a different strategy, which we did. We adapted together with the feedback. Exactly
what we thought going into it. Maybe it wasn't what happened, but like it projected us to the next step and it took us even further, which that's important because like sometimes
the risk you're taking, that as failure.
Not right. Which like if you are just looking at that piece of the puzzle, like sure, we didn't stay in the house for even over 2 years. Like it was, but like everything comes together to create that puzzle where we are now. And like, you have to appreciate that like, sure, things happen. Maybe like the plan where you think it's going, you have to adjust a little bit. But that literally continues to launch you forward to what you're actually trying to get to and where you really want to be. And
love that. Without buying that first home, we wouldn't have understood the power of leveraging our home for the next example that we are going to share with you. We would have just, sat there and been like, okay, yeah, we'll buy our home down the road. Yeah. But then what we learned in that short 9 months is number one, every aspect of a house, right?
Yeah.
We learned how to fix a house. Number two, we learned
so much fun.
We learned that we didn't need 2,400 square feet for two of us. We needed 1,200 square feet and we needed our house to start making money for us.
Which is what led us to when we bought our next house was a home with a basement apartment. And that was like the only thing we had to have on our list when buying a house. I mean, location was important, but like we had to have a home that had a basement apartment so that we could, live in like 1,200 square feet, but rent out the other and be, living off of, I don't know what, like $400 to $600 mortgage or whatever.
$400 a month.
Yeah. I mean, which at the time was like, that's super low now, but like at the time that was like awesome. And that was,
it was $300 less than the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment.
And we were in a 3-bedroom space.
Yeah,
it was
awesome.
Had a yard, had a home. It was, huge.
Yeah.
And like you're investing in a home and someone else is contributing to paying your mortgage. Like there's a lot of risk there. Like we bought more of a house than we would have without that. But, we were like, we're going to have renters. This is going to be great. Like this is going to end up being an awesome situation for us.
And I think the one thing too is going back is like, what if we don't have a renter? Like I remember that. But I also remember like the day we moved into the house, like we closed on the house, we had a tenant move in. It happened instantly. And then what we also found is there was a need. Like we learned very quickly after 6 applications that there was a need for this space and that people were willing to spend money. And then over time we started going, all right, if there's a need, we better fulfill that need. Yeah. So then it led to our second home.
Third home, but second,
our
2 at the same time.
House that we could rent out. And what was absolutely crazy about that is Ambry and I, going back to that vision, we understood together what it was that we needed.
We wanted to build the rental portfolio.
We wanted to build that. And we knew exactly what we're looking at. Location, once again, not as important. It was important to be in a good area, but location was not as important.
We wanted a good area where we could attract good renters, but like at the end of the day, we wanted a home that would
fulfill our needs.
The
then the vision, right? So what was crazy about that is Ambry was busy one night and couldn't go see this house. And I was
Probably
literally
working late or something.
You were working late, something. And this house comes up and I call our real estate agent at the time, who was awesome. Shout out to Scott for being a great guy and mentor for us. But call him up. Scott, we need to see this house. And I walked through that house, and within 5 minutes of being in that house, I was like, okay, let's write up an offer. Ambry wasn't even there. She saw the house one time. And what was crazy about that, and that was, to me, Ambry, that's like a pivotal moment for us, because it was like, this is a $325,000 risk that we're taking right now. I'm putting it under contract. You haven't even seen the house. But because we both aligned our goals so well, it was a no-brainer. You walked in the house, you're like, man, this house looks like it needs a lot of work. But then...
And we understood that, like, we had a due diligence period where I could go see the house and it would all be fine. But we also understood, like, you need to act quick on this. We need to execute now, and then, you know, and then deal with the, like, the feedback and deal with the continuation of the process. But, like, timing is everything.
Yeah.
And so, but
another episode coming up, guys.
But awesome that, you know, like, we grew to that point where, like, we could trust each other and understand, like, we have the same goal. Jesse knows my feelings. I know his. Like, we know what path we're on. And so when Jesse walked in that house and saw it, he's like, this works. Like, I know this, even though, like, I hadn't seen it, he's like, this will work. Ambry's going to be good with this. Like, you know, it makes sense.
Still to this day, favorite investment we ever made.
Yeah.
Both of us
love
agree.
that PG house.
Everyone, like, we look back at that and go, man, we should have stayed there sometimes. But favorite investment. And I think the reason why it was our favorite is because we were so synchronized.
Yeah.
And we knew our stuff so well that it was a no-brainer. Like, if Ambry walked through that house and I wasn't there, like, she would have done the same thing. She would have been able to just say, yep, this is what we want, Jesse, let's do it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that was what was so cool about it. And so all of these things, these little tiny risks have led up to us.
This is the evolution, right?
The evolution,
But you have to be aligned. You have to understand one another, and you have to, like, make that work. And you have to understand how to be an effective, efficient team. And that led us.
Yeah.
Like,
that led us to where we're at now.
Yeah.
Right?
And the biggest... so far the biggest risk we've taken, which is
our real estate company.
Yeah. Going from both of us working 8 to 5 jobs, like having that guaranteed income, like, but also being like tied to an 8 to 5 job, which neither of us loved. You absolutely hated it. I didn't mind it until we had our daughter. And then I'm like, you know what? This isn't what I want. Like, I want to be at home. I want to be a mom. Like, this is what I want to do. And so anyways, long story short, we got our real estate licenses. We figured we'd keep Jesse's job just to, like, have that safety net. And then, like, got busy. And one day Jesse literally quit his job and comes home and, like, okay, well, we have $10,000. We could live for, 6 months or whatever. Yeah. And there we go. Like, we have 6 months to...
I think it went back to the feedback, though. Do you remember? Because I came home one day and you were just, like, crying. You were, like...
I was
You
overwhelmed.
were feeling it because you were showing a house with Quincy. Quincy started choking in the car.
Oh, she started throwing up in the backseat of the car on the way to a showing.
And she started
I was showing your
up.
mom, and I was showing your mom a house, and it was like, I had to pull over and, like, anyways, just...
Take care of that. It was just crazy.
Overall, it was like, why did we start this? Because I wanted that my, like, main priority, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to, like, be there for our children. I didn't want to have to send them to daycare if I didn't need to. Like, how could we create that? And so then when it started to become so busy that, like, I couldn't really, like, do that. Like, I was taking Quincy along with me everywhere, which worked for a while, but then it was like, all right, something has to give. Like, either we've got to, like, scale back or we have to go all in. And, in typical Jesse nature, he decides to go all in.
8 hours later, I gave my resignation, and that was my last day at a wonderful company. Yeah. But it was my last day.
Awesome job. Yeah, but it just wasn't what we wanted at the end of the day. And so like we had that decision at that point, like, do we stay on the track we're on, or do we go for what we really want? And we went for what we wanted, and I'm so glad we did. Now, we did consider, like, okay, if you quit your job, like, we have no income, we really don't want to rack up like months of credit card debt, living expenses, like that would, set us back. So, we looked at our finances, made sure like we had enough money saved up that we could live for 6 months if we needed to. Like, if we had no income for 6 months, we would be okay. And, assuming we had our renters and all of that, like, it would be fine. And so there we go. And like, one of the funny things is, like, early on, like, literally there were several times that we took risks. In the beginning, we would look at each other and like have to literally say, like, okay, if we lose everything, then what? We lose everything. We're okay. We can start over. Like, we were young enough that it was like, if we had to start over, it'd be fine. It's not like we're losing like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, we'll start over. We'll be okay. Like, we have our priorities in check. We have our core. Like, we have each other. We have our family. That's what we need. And we can rebuild, which now, like, we don't ever ask ourselves that anymore. But like, that was kind of a safety net at first, that it was like, okay, so worst case scenario, we lose everything. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, that biggest risk we've ever taken was just jumping in time to being full-time entrepreneurs and, evaluating the risk of that and just going all in and seeing the vision and going for that. Like, we were going for that dream, that vision, that goal of what we actually wanted.
And I think that really what that dream was in the beginning was you being at home with the kids.
Yeah.
It wasn't about money. Like,
not really. I mean,
it wasn't about,
we could have just been making the same we were at our jobs and been happy because we had the freedom that we were looking for of me being able to be at home. I know you always talked about, like, I want to be at all the activities. I want to be able to go to, like, now Quincy's 5 and if she's in gymnastics, you can go to her gymnastics every once in a while and watch. Like, there's things that you get to do now that you wouldn't otherwise if we didn't take those risks and jump in.
And it came down to, like, I wanted to go to the gym when I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to, like, my time is what I wanted. And that was my motivator. It wasn't ever about the money. And that was what ultimately put us on track of achieving what we wanted. Is we had what was important. We understood what was important. And I think that really, like, obviously with anything, you go back and design your risk, right? You design your goals, you consider the obstacles, but you don't elaborate the obstacles. You consider them, but then you design the results you want from a get-go. And you do it with your spouse. Right.
Yeah. And you understand that, like, you're going to receive feedback. There's no failure, but you will receive that feedback. But you can figure it out and you can get back on track. Like, you are on the same page. You have the same vision. Like, you're going to figure it out. It's okay. Like,
I think, like, I remember when we quit the job and we had the 6 months of living expenses, feedback came, Jesse, you guys, no one knows. If they don't know you, they can't flow you, like Grant Cardone would say, right? Like, no one knows you're a real estate agent. You haven't put any marketing out there. And I remember that was the feedback instantly as I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, what am I doing every day? And I remember doing all this research instantly. That was the other risk that we ended up taking was, like, we met a marketer and he looked at us and he said, hey, I need 3 of your 6 months living expenses.
Yeah, his fee was $6,000 and we literally had $10,000 to our name. So we dropped.
So even more. I had 60% of your living expenses. So it was like, it's, now you have 3 months. Like, get to work.
Or whatever. Yeah.
An average real estate transaction closes in like 30 days.
Yeah.
And it's a 90-day cycle generally from client to close.
I mean, the market, like, shifts back and forth, but, like, at the time it was like, it could be anywhere from like 30 to like 190 days before you actually close a deal, depending on,
Right. And that was the thing, is that risk, once again, it came back. There was the feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Luckily, Ambry and I sat down, we said, this is what we're going to do. And that actually ended up propelling us to another level of awesome with our company. But that's the thing, is you are going to receive feedback. Yep. It's not failure. You quit your job. No one knows you're a real estate agent. No one knows you're an insurance agent, whatever the case. Like, you quit your job. Process. Now what are you going to do with that? Yeah. Go into that curiosity mindset and start learning and start implementing new things, right? This will make you feel fulfilled because you are working for yourself and you're experiencing something amazing in that moment. Yeah. Like, I'm going to go off on a little analogy or a rant here or a Jesseism, whatever you want to call it.
Another Jesse analogy.
You go to school, you pay your student loans, like you take out a student loan and you go to school to learn a certain trait. Well, guess what? In the entrepreneurial aspect of things, risk is what you're paying. Your school. That's your dues. That might cost you money. That might make you money, but the risk is your student loan. Yeah. And that is what's going to get your education. It's it's not like, hey, pay money and I'll learn something and get a piece of paper. Not knocking on degrees. Yeah. The risk, though, for an entrepreneur is your student loan. And that can either make you money or it could break you money. Like, you could have no money, right?
What's cool about that, though, is it's like don't think about risk as like you take a risk and you're just throwing your hands up and you're like, well, I hope this works out. Like, that is not how it works. Like, you make a risk and there's that initial, like, you have to jump all in. But then after that, you are going to make it happen. Like, you're using your tools, your resources, you're taking the feedback and you are going with it. Like, you're creating it. You're putting your heart and soul into it. So, like, it's not just like a throw your hands up and this is like, hope this works.
Like Hail Mary.
Right. Like, that's not what it is. It is you putting your heart and soul and what you've learned, what you're going to learn into that. And that's what creates a positive outcome as well. Yeah. And like, also like going back to like the initial question of like, how do you get your spouse on board? Like, that's how, like, you have to do it and you have to prove that like together you can work through that feedback and you can create something amazing out of a risk.
I'm going to talk to the men specifically here that are listening. Your spouse loves you very much and she wants you to succeed. But if you are a lazy sack of crap and you have not proved anything to your spouse, do not expect your spouse to believe you. Yeah. If you are playing video games at night and you're not progressing and you're failing in your classes if you're in school or you're failing at your job and you're not an overachiever, you do not expect your wife to say, yeah, honey, take the credit card for $100,000 and invest in a business.
That's huge. And like, just, I mean, to add on to that, like, it's an evolution, right? Like, you start and you grow, but like, I literally can say like everything Jesse does from the minute he wakes up to the minute he goes to bed at night is on track and aligned with his goals, with our goals, with like where we're going. Like, there's not a minute of time where it's like, wasted or not purposeful. Like, and
you don't have to be, huge. You don't have to be at that level. But like, once again, like if you've started something and then 3 months later you give up on that, like even a diet, let's talk about diets like we did in the one episode. You spend $200 on all this stuff. And then 2 weeks later you're eating out and you're not really progressing and you've went and spent that money. Your spouse is not paying attention, is paying attention to that. And so when you go and say, hey, I've got this grandiose idea and I need to take a line of credit or I need to do something, your spouse is looking at it like, well, what about your gym?
Yeah, you don't even know what you want. You don't know, right? Like, you don't have that. Yeah, you don't have that design of what you want and what you're doing to get there, and then having the results that create that credibility, if you will. I mean, like, that's huge. So, I mean, you have to have trust, and trust is there, but you also, I mean, you got to prove it too.
You've got to prove it.
You have to prove that you have what it takes and that you can do that, but also, respect where your spouse is coming from and create something amazing together. I mean, you have always pushed me out of my comfort zone when it comes to risk, which is, I appreciate, and I think it's amazing, but like, you've never done it in a way that's like rude or like, what's the right way to put it? Like, I don't feel like you're just throwing me in the deep end and being like, okay, we'll figure this out. Like, it's much more than that. And it's like, it's respectful and it's understanding. And I think there's been plenty of times when probably you've been like, oh, I would have probably jumped a little farther, but like, you appreciate and respect where I'm coming from and want me to feel good about it too. And so that's where you are able to grow, is when you work together. Maybe it's not exactly where either of you would have gone. Like I would have, maybe played it a little safer. You would have gone more risky, but we found that middle ground. We went for it. And that's where you're able to then like move forward and grow together, and be on the same page. And then you align, you do align, and that does happen.
I think what's so beautiful about that, and like, wow, listen to me, it's so beautiful. What I think is so amazing too, is the fact that you and your spouse are doing it together. Right? So your marriage is strengthening so much because you're doing things together that you never would have thought you could achieve. Yeah. And it's not like you're doing it by yourself. Like, look at me, like all the fame. No, you're doing it with your spouse. And it's like, whoa, like we can do anything.
All of a sudden, like that celebration and that like excitement when things happen, and when your risk actually creates money, or it creates, what you were going for.
It makes your vacations more fun.
Yeah.
It makes your rewards more fun. It eliminates the doubts and the insecurities because you're doing things together. You know that you're aligned.
Yeah. And for us, that's what we have always wanted. That's what we've always done. Like, I mean, from the very beginning, even when we had to work different jobs, and like, we always had like some side gig that we were doing together that was, a passion for us. And so if that's what you want, like, just know that it is possible, and it might take some work and it might take some, designing, but it's 100% possible.
It's so cool. We're going to share with you one thing that we created. We're going to patent this, you guys. This is copyrighted activity.
Yeah, this is definitely going to.
And I'm over here with both my hands up right now. I'm looking like someone hit a punt or a field goal. But we're calling this a risk sandwich. Okay? We want you guys to think about it. Like, I'm a foodie, so let's break it down with food association of a sandwich, right? First piece of bread is the trust. Once again, you need to have trust with your spouse. You need to show your spouse that what you say you're going to do is what you're going to actually do, right? You need to establish that. Number 2, you and your spouse need to have a vision.
Yep. Gotta know where you're going.
Where are you going?
Yep.
What do you two want, right? Is it for us? We want Ambry and me to be involved in our kids' life. We want to be able to go to gymnastics, football, basketball, whatever the case. And Ambry wants to stay at home with these kids. Yeah. That's the vision. Everything else?
Immediately.
Yeah. Immediately. Like,
someday it's going to be like owning an island somewhere and being able to travel whenever we want.
It's the Bugatti.
The Bugatti.
The Bugatti.
But like, you've got to have those visions, and you have to have that clear.
Yeah. Next step, stop talking about it. Go freaking do it.
Execute.
Execution. Execute. And don't create limiting excuses like, well, when we have the money, there's money everywhere. Go get it. Go find it. Make a risk together and hold each other accountable. It's more fun risking other people's money than it is risking your own.
That is true.
It is more fun, and it gives you an endorphin rush that just like, as you guys can tell, I'm like ready to just strangle my microphone. I'm so excited. Go execute. Don't wait. You can wait 10 years, but you're never going to get there. Right? The next thing.
10 years from now, where will you be if you actually do take this step? Like, that's the thing, is like, I look at our life, like we just celebrated 10 years of marriage. Where would we be now if we hadn't like taken those initial risks and steps? Now we're looking at it going like, we should have risked farther. We should have done more.
Went so much more.
We'll always say that, right? Like, everyone's always going to be like, oh, I wish we would have known the housing market 6 years ago. We would have bought 20 houses.
Right.
But anyways, then, so that's 1, 2, and 3. Then the 4th is accountability.
Big time.
Yeah.
You got to be accountable with yourself and admit that you're wrong. And you got to be accountable with your spouse. Those 2 things are super important.
And the biggest thing, like with risk, like you're accountable together for the result and what you do with the feedback along the way. Like you're 100% accountable for all of that. Both of you. Like, there's no like, oh, well, this was your idea. Oh, this, like, no, that doesn't exist. Like, you are equally accountable.
Yeah.
And then to finish that sandwich, what's on the other end?
Trust
again. Trust. I feel like you could also add respect. Trust and respect. I feel like those are crucial, because you start you start and end with trust and respect. Like, trust is crucial.
Right.
Like, and you have to, like, if you are expecting that trust, you better live up to that expectation. You better earn and deserve that trust with everything that you do and say.
And I'm not going to lie. Like, it's not just trusting each other, it's trusting in God.
Yeah,
I'm going to say
for
it.
sure.
I'm going to say that right now. Like, trusting in your Heavenly Father, God, and Jesus Christ, that is going to move you more too, because you've done everything you can. Now it's time to ask for help and get the help you deserve.
Yeah, you got to be humble too. And that goes back to, like, once again, having your priorities in check. Like, you have to have that in check. Like, you're in control, but you also have, like, influences, and you have, like, if you want things to go right, have God on your side. Like, and then again, like, if you receive feedback and it's not necessarily going quote unquote right, like, you will have what it takes to get through that feedback and to push forward. Because like we said, it's not always going to go exactly the way you want or think. Sure. Like, things change, but at the end of the day, you'll still get where you want to go and where you're headed if all of these things are in check.
Yeah, and the accountability. You're working together.
Yeah.
Instead of one feeling like they're taking it all on, you're doing it together.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that, like, let's just, like, it would suck really bad to go into a risk and be like, I'm doing this. This is what we're doing. Like, and your spouse is just kind of like, okay, I mean, whatever. And then let's say it does go completely wrong. Like, all of a sudden, like, you don't have someone on board with you working through that feedback and getting like on track again and getting to your end goal. Like, you don't have that support. And then how bad does it feel when you have to be like, well, this didn't go the way I thought. And your spouse is over there like, I could have told you so, or like, you shouldn't have done that. Like, that is so unhealthy.
Nope.
And so, like, having mutual accountability and respect is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. So here's your challenge from us today. We want you to create your vision. Once again, don't tell us money. That's not the vision. What is your vision? What does your ideal life look like? What does it look like with your spouse and your family? What is it?
It's more than money. Money is involved. Money is definitely an aspect, but like, why?
Right. And so, like, we're going to sit down and create this vision, and then I'm going to use an analogy to kind of help you with the risk sandwich here.
So good at analogies.
So let's say I'm starting a low risk investment, right? Low risk, not a ton of money. And let's say it's a vending machine, right? So I'm coming to my spouse, I'm coming to Ambry and saying, Ambry, we're going to invest in vending machines. Mm-hmm. And naturally, your probably first question is going to be,
where's it going to go? How much does it cost?
Right.
Like, what are we putting in the vending machine?
Where did this idea come
all
from?
The things.
Right.
Yeah, that too.
Like, okay, what YouTube video did you watch? And anyways, so vending machine, sitting down, talking about it. Okay, we now get past the point and say, okay, yeah, let's try this. Okay, we create a vision. What is this vending machine going to do? What are we going to do with that money? What are we going to feel like and know that we are actually achieving what we want with this risk? And we're going to write that down. We're creating the vision. Why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. It's not money. There's another reason. You got to determine that. Why are we doing this together? And you'll know when you find it, because both of you will be like, boom, this is the vision.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're both on board, right?
Yep.
Because you understand the vision. Next, execution. Stop waiting. Waiting will never get you where you want to go. Okay? You wait in line right at Lagoon, or Disneyland, because there's other theme parks outside of Utah.
Our little bubble here in Utah.
You're waiting at Disneyland or a ride at a theme park. If you had the opportunity to jump the line, you would do it in a heartbeat. So why don't you freaking jump the line right now?
Boom.
Right?
Mic drop.
Stop waiting. Stop making limiting excuses.
There's always something, like, I could see myself being like, well, what if these products we're buying don't sell in the vending machine? Well, great. Don't go buy 1,000 of them. Buy 100 and see what happens, and then adjust. Like,
design the execution.
Adjust your product. Adjust what you need to, but, like, stay on your track.
Oh, I don't have the money. Well, guess what? You can get a credit card in about 2 minutes. And that
Jesse
credit card
loves leveraging other people's money.
Yes.
If you haven't noticed.
And that credit card can be interest free for up to 18 months. You have 18 freaking months to figure out how you're going to make what, $5,000, $6,000 to pay your investment
and
for a
if
vending
you've got
machine?
that risk sandwich in place, you're going to do it.
Right.
It's
Right.
not, yeah.
So then going back, you've done the execution. Boom, here we go. This is our game plan, the accountability. All right, great. We, like you just said, we're not going to buy 5,000 Three Musketeer bars because those suck. We're going to buy 100 and see what each one sells.
Yeah.
We're going to go buy
You're going to
100
test the market.
Reese's.
You're going to do your research and figure it
Exactly.
out. But
We're
you're
gonna
not going to
figure
let
it out
that stop you
along the
from
way.
doing it in the
Yes.
first place.
We're not going to go into data paralysis because we're overlooking all the different things in the trends. We're going to go buy a little bit at a time and figure it out. And if we have an excess of Three Musketeers bars because they suck, then that's fine.
Figure out something
We'll
to
figure
do
out
with
something to do with them. We'll donate it to charity. We'll donate it to a food bank. Something. There's a kid on the side of the
some
road.
Instagram reel that goes viral with Three
Yeah.
Musketeers. I mean,
Wow.
you could do so.
Holy crap. All right, there you go. Okay. That's feedback that you're going to get. Be accountable for that feedback. Take action. Don't sit there and wait, right?
Yep.
Then at the end again, trust. You've done everything you can. At the end of the day, you sit down and you say, okay, we've got our vision. We got our execution accountability. We're going to trust. We're going to trust in each other. We're going to trust in God, and we're going to go make this happen.
Yep. So if this
Boom.
is something that you're like facing and something that is a challenge in your relationship, like there's your challenge. Start now, like create that vision, establish a risk, create a risk. Like what is that risk that you're going to take, and talk about it, make a plan, and then go for it, and then allow the feedback to guide you together and to create a positive situation. And it will. If you're both all in and you're going for it, it will. And yeah.
Yeah. Remember,
Awesome.
guys, your comfort zone is just that. It's comfort.
It's comfort, but that's
comfort.
That's not what you want.
It's not an area of growth, and it's not an area of massive fulfillment.
I think that should be another episode.
It will be another episode. How to achieve massive fulfillment by being outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Get out of the comfort.
The Matrimonial
Comfort sucks. Who wants
Merger.
comfort?
No one. No, I don't want to sleep on a nice, comfy bed. No.
Want a fulfilled bed.
I want a fulfilled bed. Love it.
Thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in again this week. We hope this has been helpful or enlightening in some way. We'd love to hear from you guys. That just never goes away. So send us a DM. You can find us on Instagram at FiscoFrenzy. We'd love to hear from you. If you have something you want to share, tag us in your story, send us a DM.
And thanks to the listener for that question.
Yeah,
too.
that was a great
That was
question.
a great
Thank
question.
you. So
Keep
keep
them
the
coming,
questions.
guys.
Yeah, we love that. If we can build our episodes around like specific feedback and questions, that's awesome. And if you enjoyed listening, and please leave us a 5-star review. Help us grow this podcast.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.
Have a good week.